A long time ago, in a land far, far away, four warriors of light came to the castle on the edge of the great woods. Their story begins now.
1987 Square Limited.
That was pretty smooth. We didn't even
Yeah,
rehearse
actually.
that. There we go. All right. Well, hello everybody, and as Matthew and I just hinted, we were talking about fantasy. Oh, and not just any fantasy. The final one. All
We finally talked
25.
about it.
All 25 and a half of them. Oh boy. All right. So, we hope you are doing well. Um, out there in internet land. Things are going strangely here in the real world, yet things march on as they ever were. Same as
I'm
it ever
getting,
was.
I'm getting better. I'm
I'm
getting
glad to hear
better.
that. I'm losing my mind.
I fall down, but I get up again. Ain't never gonna keep me down.
You know, there are just some days when life kicks you in the nuts and then steals your car while flipping you the double bird. So, moving right along. Happy April Fool's Day, everybody. Yesterday, I wrote a satire article for the school newspaper.
Oh, what was that about?
A lot of things. They haven't run me out of town on a rail yet, so that's probably good.
No. What did it involve? Faculty or what?
It involved mostly student life stuff, but
Okay.
yeah.
Sounds like you're a regular Mark Twain.
I try. I haven't read anything about jumping frogs yet.
No.
Uh,
Sane, or he wrote a lot about. Well, he wrote a story about Sane. Very interesting.
Mark Twain wrote a lot of things. You know who else wrote a lot of things? The
You?
people at Squaresoft. The people at
Okay. Yes.
Squaresoft made a lot of games, But they like any good gaming software company, they found their cash cow, and they are still milking it. So we're here to talk to you guys about Final Fantasy, a series that is, well, sort of in a way connected to almost anybody who's been a gamer, a long time gamer.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So
Either from like actually playing it or being like related to it, but I'm like talent that made this or that game or
yeah,
that.
sort of inescapable in a way. So, Matt, what is your personal relationship with Final Fantasy?
I wasn't really like ready for it. I'm trying to remember what my first game was. I think it was like when I went to GameStop, bought the DS port or remake of Final Fantasy 4, I believe.
4 or 3?
Four,
Okay.
four in Japan. The fourth,
Okay, 4 in Japan. Gotcha.
and that was interesting. That when Hurricane Sandy hit, that was like the one game I played just straight on through, and that was so
Nice.
interesting.
During Hurricane Sandy, I was playing Pokemon Mystery Dungeon on the Game Boy Advance.
Oh, we all have our memories.
We all.
That was very interesting. I remember like sitting at the kitchen table and smelling the oil burner of my uncle's so long for my great uncle's oil burner, and then like playing that, and also eating a Chick-fil-A sandwich reheated in like a I forget what I
Was
didn't even know
it
how we got it
a
working.
camp stove, right?
I think it was that. Yeah, that was really interesting.
I take it back. It was Hurricane. No, during Hurricane Sandy, I was playing Final Fantasy One. It was Hurricane Irene when I was playing Pokemon
Um,
Mystery. Why do we have natural disaster related game memories?
it's also interesting how McDonald's and Chick-fil-A are still running during the apocalypse.
Still are. I remember during Sandy, Panera was still open during Sandy.
During
The
its
the
touchdown.
Yeah, no, like the Panera down the street from your house
Oh
was
wow,
still was like open the day after.
it wasn't freestanding though. It's probably helped it.
Yeah, like we were there the day after because, well, it's like one of the 5 places that had power. Uh,
Uh, just gamer things.
just came. It's just living in the eastern seaboard during hurricane season things.
Yes.
Uh,
So that's my introduction to it. What's your attraction and introduction to it, Drew?
My attraction and introduction started. I was always kind of interested by the idea. Like I've heard of it, and I'm kind of like, oh, it's kind of interesting. I'm like, wow, there's a whole lot of these games. Um,
Final Fantasy 13, 2.5.
Final Fantasy 2. I don't.
Lightning's baby.
Lightning's friends and relations. Lightning does things. Lightning in a bottle of. Oh look, Final Fantasy 13, 17 with Lightning McQueen.
It's like the Barbie of Square Enix. You gotta like buy her and all her friends games.
No, but my introduction to Final Fantasy was that I don't remember exactly how I first started looking at it, but I remember looking it up. I think I looked it up on Game FAQs, Game Facts.
Okay.
Because that's how I used to learn about old games. I used to kind of like hear them mentioned in a YouTube video, and I'd go look them up on Game Facts to see like what they were about. And I did that with Final Fantasy 1, and it seemed really interesting to me. So I decided I ended up buying off Amazon. I got Final Fantasy Dawn of Souls, which is a remake. It was a redone port. It's a partial remake, but it's also a port of the first two Final Fantasy games. One in the first two.
It's Game Boy, right?
Yeah, it's
I have that. I barely played it, but I have it.
Yeah, ported to Game Boy. That's what I have, and that's how I played. I played through one a couple times. I like one a lot. I've tried two. I don't like two. I just really don't like two. It does some really cool things. It tries a lot of different things. But the system it has for leveling stuff up, it just doesn't work. It just does not work. You have to have to take damage for your health to go up. You have to. Yeah, I know it's a stupid idea, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like they were kind of experimenting. I'm just actually kind of surprised they, trying to experiment so early in Square's history because they were like on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah, and so it was to me. It was like it wasn't a huge fan of two. I have played the original Kingdom Hearts.
Okay.
It's a good game. I think it suffers from a little bit of being chronically overrated, but like it's funny because like people either really love that game or they really hate that game.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, I like it. I just don't like. I mean, like, it's a good game, but it like doesn't like move me. Like, it's not something I will play over and over again.
That's a weird concept, but like, out of all of them, what do you think your favorite battle system is, and why?
Oh, I like the idea of the later handheld battle systems.
Okay.
I tend to not be good at. Like, I tend to just naturally prefer turn-based things to action things. I like being able to plan and think and take time to decide. Versus like, I'm not as good with snap stuff. So I tend to prefer
It's more like hack and slash at that point. I heard Final Fantasy 15 was like that, which kind of was based off of Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, I haven't played too many of the later Final Fantasies. So for me, I just tend to like the earlier turn-based ones.
Yeah, I mean, I know you haven't really played the other ones. It's just turn-based mostly, right?
Yeah, well, there's eventually this real-time battle system type thing they move into. It's kind of somewhere between the two. I have yet to experience that one.
Okay.
But like, I really like like this first one has a lot. The first one had a lot of. The first one was fairly revolutionary. The second one wanted to be revolutionary. It didn't, but it tried.
I mean, I think with the first one at least, like it was one of the first video game franchises to treat. Trying to look at my notes.
Yeah.
I think it had like with the RPG style, like I'm trying to think what it had like. Oh, it originated concepts like group monster battles, like having like multiple monsters per, like I think so, yeah. I think the Final Fantasy III introduced class change system too, and eventually I think vehicle transport, maybe the first one as well.
First one has vehicle transport.
Yeah, because it had airships.
I really enjoyed the first one. I have to say. I mean, and overall, for a game as old as it is, I think it holds up pretty well.
Oh yeah, they weren't even trying to be Dragon Quest back then. They were just like trying to mess around because they thought it was going to be his Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I thought it'd be the last game. As it turns out, here we are with 15 of the suckers. Um, yeah, I mean, the story is pretty famous. I mean, I don't know how many people know. To me, I think one of the things that it does best is um, Final Fantasy has always done something that other RPGs don't always do. Like, it may not be the best or most innovative RPG system from the most innovative RPG company. I mean, I think we could all agree that, well, at least by all I mean you and me, Square
Yes.
is hardly pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Well, they say that the last good one was 10, and that was kind of a mixed bag. And they say 15. I really want to try 15, even though it had some bugs on it. But yeah, like overall, like yeah, it did. It really started out great, and then like I think the best thing it'll be known for is just taking story seriously in RPGs, like really seriously. And then 7 came out, which I don't think was the first 3D uh, RPG, but it got people into it. I think like that was the first RPG for many people. I mean, like I've been playing a couple hours of it too, and I really like what I see. I mean, from a killing perspective, it's art. You can. I don't know. I haven't played a lot of their games, but like it's hard to say really how deep it is. But I'd say it's deeper than most games. I'd say.
Yeah, Final Fantasy to me is like, even when the story doesn't make sense, at least they're trying to do something with it.
It seemed to excel best with like characters. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the thing they really do really well is aesthetic.
Oh yeah, I
Is
think their art is like basically perfect. I think
they
you
have
can
they
agree on
have
that, right?
such a distinctive art style. Like you look at a Final Fantasy thing and say, "Hey, that's Final Fantasy." Like you know it.
Yeah.
Like even if you never played it, you know it. And also the music, the musical work for Final Fantasy has been uh, top notch in general. I mean, I know some people say that there are one or two games that have kind of misses every once in a while,
Oh yeah, sure.
but I think overall as a series they've just had a lot. Albeit though, I know some people are thrown off by the fact that, like, between like for some reason between like 6 and 7, all of a sudden it's like we go from medieval to like outer space, but that's you know,
And then you go back to like medieval again in 9.
and then you're kind of like in medieval outer space with guns in the rest of the series. It's
Yeah, I know.
it's it's unique, but the thing is, another thing they do is they didn't stay rooted. Like
Yeah,
if you look at other RPGs, like how many of them have had the world like Final Fantasy took sort of what was a very 80s notion, was sort of the fantasy and sci-fi all together type thing,
yeah.
which you would agree that that's sort of definitely an idea from that era.
Oh yeah, I mean like I don't think it uses its genre deeply, but it definitely uses it artistically. And I think it like works in a mental level, not so much well, heart level, but not so much a mental level. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so it kind of takes that idea, but then it unfolded it into like the following games, like that whole togetherness of like robots and fantasy, spaceships and fantasy. That's been an integral part of the series.
I mean, yeah, like it kind of like reflects the real world like in a way that like I think sometimes just regular fantasy doesn't. Like they have like technology on the sides of like religions. And again, I don't think they ever treat that very deep or the ramifications, but it's just like interesting like that kind of makes it like in my opinion the true successor to Star Wars in a large way. Like oh,
That's interesting. Ooh, this is gonna be a fun one. Throw it to the comment section. Is Final Fantasy the cultural successor to Star Wars? By Star Wars, I'm assuming you mean the original trilogy.
Oh yes, yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, here's a question you never thought you'd hear today. That is Final Fantasy as a series the cultural successor of Star Wars? To me, the easiest counter argument would say relative popularity,
Oh yeah.
but perhaps could we allow the Eastern spiritual successor? Or the
Well, I think
spirit
they did better with like art and stuff, and like that's who we should have done. Had the prequels done by the Final Fantasy team.
Squaresoft makes Star Wars? His,
Yes,
his, yeah,
they
yeah.
should have done that before. Instead of the spirits within.
That's a bad movie. That's a bad movie. I can just see it now. Let's see if Squaresoft took over, so there'd be. See, we'd have like Darth Vader. I'm thinking we have Darth Vader. We'd have some sort of Skywalker.
Han Solo with a gun sword.
Han Solo with the gun sword. You'd have instead of the old master who teaches things, he'd be named Sid, Master Sid. And Luke Skywalker has the danger of taking out fluorescent lights whenever he tries to stand up from a chair, but oh, my hair broke the ceiling again.
Oh,
Oh, oh,
Mark Hamill with spiky hair.
Mark. Imagine like Mark Hamill with like the hair from Jesse from Team Rocket.
Oh gosh, that really would break something.
It's like 5 feet long.
Weighs down your head a little bit. I had to tip it.
Oh my word. Team Rocket.
And like you have to have like crystals come out of the lightsaber.
Yeah. Oh, it's a crystal. And then everybody fights over it. It's like there's something about Gaia. Gaia and the crystals.
The force of Gaia.
Mm-hmm.
Gaia's the force.
Yeah, it's my main problem I think with Final Fantasy is that the lore makes no sense.
Yeah, and it's funny because like a lot of the stuff that like they borrowed from Western culture, like Excalibur and stuff like that, and certain like Lilith and demon names from like Kabbalism. It's just all over the place. You're right.
Yeah, but also they have like distinctly Eastern stuff.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like I'd say, like
monks.
oh yeah, really, Onion Knights or whatever.
I don't even know what an Onion Knight is.
I'm pretty sure it's a class in Final Fantasy.
Oh, I know it's a class. You can play it. You can play as one in Bravely Default, spiritual successor to the old Final Fantasy games. For me, Final Fantasy would never be. I don't think. So far yet, I have not had one be my favorite game, but I really do like that. Like it's one of those things. Like you may not be their biggest fan, but you're happy when they do something.
Yeah. But like going back to what you said, like yeah, they don't like take their elements to create something deep. This kind of feels like it's all over the place. Like they're just like it's funny. Like Final Fantasy is like one of those things that is a product and knows it, but it's really trying not to be. I think that's the difference between Star Wars. It kind of always was a product and knew it. But you also get that like tension between Japan of like having to create a franchise that's a good product that sells well and like trying to be innovative. And I think that's also like where the not having a single creator actually helped this cause. Like the Sakaguchi or whoever like started Final Fantasy. Like he only was producer and creator for like the first 5 titles, and once he came out, they literally produced 6 and 7, which is considered their 2 best creators. So I think the too many cooks situation that Final Fantasy is in is actually kept it good. It's been its best element, I think.
True. To some extent, true, I think. But even though the lore is just like.
And they feel a strong need to like recycle certain elements that don't really make sense. Like certain things make sense as game mechanics, like chochobos are usually like vehicles. Same thing with airships.
What'd you call them?
Chochobos?
I think it. I've always heard it pronounced chocobo. But
Oh well, the voice actors in 13 pronounce it Chochobo.
wait, really?
Yes, they do. At least in the American version.
People, help us out. How do you pronounce the bird thing in the fantasies that are final? Them things. The runaroundy birds. What do we call them? How are we supposed to be called? And they are not cute ostriches.
Yellow ostriches. The Chochobo dance.
Somebody probably made that.
No, don't look it up.
Don't look it up. Stay on this video. Okay, moving along. So what observations did you have sort of beyond the cursory look? Do you have like anything deeper, or is this just sort of we're just kind of shooting the breeze about Final Fantasy?
I did have some things. I tried
Sure.
to entangle them with what I write down. Like I said, Final Fantasy isn't all that deep, but like I said, this is a kind of a cursory glance because I feel that I haven't played enough Final Fantasy to give a whole thing. But like I said, every successor game being like a different take on it like really helps its cause. The game I'm most impressed with is Final Fantasy IX, but I'm kind of getting good vibes from 7. It's just like they took like for so like do you know about like Genova and Sephiroth in like 7?
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah,
I
like
mean, not experienced, but I am aware of them.
yeah, I get kind of the and this is kind of a thing in like Japan is like a themes of environmentalism. Like you have Midgar, which is the city, and it's like kind of artificial, and it's not like a fun city to be in. And like you get kind of the feeling it's kind of like the resurrection of spirituality in a dead world. And maybe this is actually what you'd consider romanticist, even though it's obviously in the postmodern era that you have like the artificiality of the Shinra Corporation taking Mako energy from the Earth, which is living as per the Gaia hypothesis, and then you have an alien, which I don't know exactly what that's saying because I don't really know much about what Genova is, even though it's expanded in other lore. But I feel like that was kind of like at least that game used its science fantasy portion well, because you have like swords and stuff, which doesn't make sense. But then you have magic kind of coming back to a dead and dying world and like kind of transforming it and ousting this alien being, offspring of an alien being. Like I said, I'm only a couple hours into it, but like I kind of get I'm end of the first disc, but like I think that it has potential to be worked in, and I think that as long as the game goes on, you can get more potential for that.
It's come a long way from killing chaos.
In what, a Jordan Peterson kind of way? What do you mean by that?
No, like killing chaos. Like I mean, like
The first who's Chaos?
First end boss is chaos.
In the first game?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's chaos. You are killing the actual embodiment of chaos. I don't know how that works.
Maybe like Jungianism.
Jungianism. Yeah. Oh yes, it's what Carl Jung. But you want to talk about Carl Jung with the animus, the anima?
No, it just reminded me of like chaos. Like Jordan Peterson talks about it a lot, like chaos and having an order between order, chaos, and Taoism, stuff like that.
The shadow and the reflection of the self.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm
that's Sephiroth too. He's supposed to be Cloud's shadow, but I don't know how that's played with. Like I said, I need to play more of the game, and they'll kind of bottleneck because of the last boss of the end of the first disc.
Oh, that's right. Psychoanalytic criticism. Nice thing about it, it can be applied to practically anything.
But I think I kind of like criticize the criticism because I wrote down that Suri blamed like a lot of like what makes Final Fantasy is like the effective Jungian type myth stories like Star Wars from the West, its global appeal, and plus Japanese cultural focus on creating a consistent best-selling product, like I said. And like there's homogeneity in the product, and that's why you kind of don't get like room for making deep artsy stories because you kind of don't outside of certain elements of it.
It is homogenized, yet disconnected. Know what this reminds me of?
What?
Pokemon with better hair.
Oh gosh.
No.
I can't really imagine an art game for Pokemon though.
I definitely can.
How so?
I would say if you switch the art to if you move the art away from the style it is now, if you move it to more of sort of the hand drawn, maybe resembling the manga style more, and
Okay.
then made it more of a I think if you made it more a more difficult, more adult story with more difficult, more adult gameplay.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I think the fan base would appreciate a retro sort of dynamic, but I think it's highly possible to make an art game for the series.
It's
Do
true,
I
but like,
think one will ever happen? No,
mhm.
never, never, ever.
But that's true. Like Pokemon has been getting more popular. It's like more bells and whistles to like change like the vanilla experience of it all.
Yeah. Whereas I think what more people wanted, at least what I want and what I've come across people wanting, is that they didn't want bells and whistles. They wanted their current experience curated rather than added to.
You mean like with the interconnectivity of Pokemon now with like Go and like oh I'm the best, I caught them all, that kind of thing?
No, when I say that, I mean more like you know how sometimes patches for online games take things away and sometimes they
Yes.
add things in?
Hmm.
Like that. Series need to be curated, not just added to.
Oh, that's definitely true. And I
Yeah.
also think Final Fantasy did another example too. Like with 15, not only is it like the battle system more like Kingdom Hearts, it kind of feels like a more realistic, almost Christopher Nolan take on like if Final Fantasy actually existed, you know, only like an alternate Earth. Like I think the game there's like three crystals left from like ancient times, and like the one went dark. So there's like warring modern day nation state style countries that like go to war to like attack like this country to get its crystal, kind of like oil, like in our world, kind of.
Oil. Texas tea. Sorry.
Okay, but you know what
I'm with you.
you sound
I'm
like.
with you.
Yeah, like I guess what I'm saying is there's still potential, but like I think the best thing about Final Fantasy is that with an average play time about 60 hours for the story, it's kind of like the perfect sweet spot to develop like the story for all the party.
Hmm.
Like you don't get much of that in the West. Like a movie is too short and a TV show is a bit too long, but a mini series is kind of like the sweet spot. But they don't have a lot of that over here. But in Japan, where RPGs are popular, you have more of that potential, I think.
Yeah, I agree. That seems about right. I'm trying to imagine Skyrim if it had a party arc. That'd be brutal.
Yes, it would be.
See, not all games need great story, kids. Uh,
And you're wrong.
and I'm actually wrong. I disagree. I think Skyrim. You are forming your own story.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
It's the magic
So
of
it
it.
gives you a great setting. That's what it gives. It gives you a great
Yes.
setting. So not entirely true. Don't quote me on that. Please don't quote me
Okay.
on that.
It's reported though, but you know.
Yes. But uh, where was I going with that? Oh, right, Skyrim. So I was thinking about Skyrim. Um, whatever it was is gone.
Oh, it's about parties and having like
Right.
characters.
Okay. I was thinking how many good TV shows over here went one season too long?
Oh, well, quite a lot if you think about it.
The X Files.
Yeah.
Some things need to stay dead. Anyway.
Yeah, but like it's kind of funny. It's like people say that like oh a 60-minute hour RPG is like too long. It's like look at American television. You know, Game of Thrones. You know, it's still not even complete written. Same thing with Walking Dead. I mean, at least their stuff is completed.
Oh man, Walking Dead. There's time in your life you're never gonna get back.
Gosh.
It's just that to me that's one of the series that pretends to be deep. It's not
Oh yeah,
actually
definitely.
deep. It just pretends. It has enough. It has enough splattered on it for people to be like, oh, what a dilemma. Versus, it's not that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this is kind of a Keeling concept of there is such a thing as a too long. piece of fiction.
Oh yes, there is. To me, a story that's just the right length. I did just read this, but it struck me as being just the right length. The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. Perfect length.
Do you know this might tickle your fancy, but I remember reading that because Peanuts went on for so long, it might be the longest piece of fiction ever created by a single human being.
Peanuts. Wow. Peanuts. To its credit, Peanuts held on to its head of steam for about 30 years.
When was that? Like 60s through
50.
90s?
I would say like from the early 60s, I'd say from the early 60s through about the mid to late 80s, the Peanuts,
No,
it it didn't do anything poorly.
no, it's true.
Towards the end, it started to rely on gag strips, and
It was the Seinfeld of comics. It was about nothing and everything.
yeah, that's actually a really good idea. The 50s, when it's just getting started, it's charming, but it isn't the 60s.
Yeah, and then it got television special, which kind of like helped its cause.
Oh yeah. And surprisingly, that's one where the movie isn't worse than the literature,
That's true.
both the past and the modern. Uh, where are we going with this one? Oh, being too long.
Yeah, that's what we originally came out of.
Yeah, though I agree, some things can be too long. What was the game that I thought was just too long?
It is. That actually is kind of funny. Like, I don't think like there are RPGs that are too long. I mean, like they say Baldur's Gate takes forever, but like I think other trends we need to like go work on. Like I remember seeing a poster for a JRPG, and it was like there was a rabbit motorcycle girl. Like she was a bunny girl, but she was a motorcycle. Like that was her species, man.
I'm interested and also strangely repulsed. Okay.
You know, they didn't just jump the shark, but they were actually the motorcycle.
Jumping the shark. Does everything I'm coming to the conclusion that every series has a jumping the shark moment. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're ridiculous. Like, the actual jumping the shark is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, the longer series goes on, it's just inevitable. I think every series you can find it basically.
Some series can prevent it, or delay it for a long time.
Yeah.
To me, the one series that I'm not sure if it ever jumped the shark. I'm thinking because most of the series that I can think of a moment where they jumped the shark, but if completed series that never jumped the shark, I'm not sure that Monk ever jumped the shark.
I wouldn't be able to say, but that's an interesting example there.
I really can't think of a jumping the shark moment. And if it is, it's in the last 2 episodes of the series.
That to me doesn't count, but you're right.
Yeah. Anything else? I'm thinking of other TV shows I like. I can all think of them having sort of a jumping the movies. That's one thing. I wonder, do you think that Marvel has hit or is going to hit its jumping the shark moment?
That's hard to say. I feel like almost like in Infinity War is it to a certain extent, but it's done so smoothly that I can't really tell. They have a good way of having all their balls in the air at the same time. It's hard to explain. Like if you haven't watched it, like this is a question for Gabrielle.
Yeah, that's a great question. I should ask her that. Let's see what she thinks. To me, I'm a game that goes on too long. To me, would be the Gen 5 Pokemon games.
Really?
There's so like.
Which one were those? Were those like Sun and Moon or what?
Black and White.
Oh, I didn't hear great things about them.
No, they're just not. They're Diamond and Pearl with worse new Pokemon. Pokemon stopped being cute after Generation 3 for the most part. I don't know what's up with that. They decided to go like
gritty Pokemon.
Yeah, like we gotta have all these sharp edges. We gotta have all this new. We're gonna try this. Like like beforehand we used to base things like this is a turtle, so it has magic water powers. This is this is a snail, or they were based on some sort of mythology.
Oh yeah, yeah, sure.
But now in like the more modern ones, like, all right, what if we had a slime dragon? Slime dragon. What if we had a grandpa dragon? What if we had a punch dragon? Punch dragon, grandpa dragon, slime dragon. Three
Grandpa
dragons.
Dragon, do 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 do.
Grandpa
Grandpa
dragon,
Dragon.
dude, dude. Exactly. It's like sometimes I wish they'd focused a little more on being like, oh yeah, we're going to actually think about how these things work, or focused on balancing the old game. Like, how come they never updated? Like, how come some of the old Pokemon did not just get Mega Evolutions, but how come sometimes they get stat bonuses for no apparent reason, and other ones don't?
I don't know.
Are you just making it up as you? I mean, obviously they are, but
Wow.
sorry.
So anyway, going back to Final Fantasy, wrapping it up.
We've been so far afield. Oh, your creepy baby thing just flashed on screen.
What?
I lost your video feed for a second. Your creepy baby thing flashed on screen.
Oh, from Brazil. Yeah.
Yeah, from Brazil. That's a good movie.
Screensaver.
It's a good movie.
Yes, we did a whole episode about
Yes,
it.
we did.
So yeah, Final Fantasy. I think it introduced the RPG to the West, especially in 7. Even though it may be a little bit overrated just because it was the first. It was a big launch title. Well, not really launch title. A 2 years later title for the PlayStation 1. And I really wondered what would happen if someone took what made it great and made it artistic on the Keelian level without losing the pulp and the energy of the series, because there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, there's something necessary about video games having that feel. But I agree. Final Fantasy, give it a shot. I say play an older one, play a newer one.
Oh yeah, definitely.
See what you like.
Maybe start with like a simple one like 1, and then go to like 9, and then if you love both, go to 15. Because I definitely want to play 15 on Steam. It looks like it's going to take up a lot of my RAM and going to make the computer really slow, and I'm basically barely going to be able to play it.
All right, moving on to questions.
You want me to go first?
Sure, go for it.
Why do you think that fantasy has been so well received with British Christianity, but not with American Christianity?
Holy crap! That's actually a great question. It's a question I've actually researched and know something about. I believe it is I believe it's the divide between the high church and fundamentalism primarily. Yeah, fundamentalism would be far less.
You mean by high church like sacramentalism, or like a style of worship?
By high church, I mean the classical. I would mean either the Roman Church, or I would mean the high church Protestants, Anglicans, Anglicanism, Lutheranism, the high, yeah, primarily those two. But the amount of artists produced from those, um, uh, let's see, T.S. Eliot, C.S. Lewis, Charles Schultz. We were just talking about Peanuts. From those church bodies, a lot of composers. I think it's because
I definitely know that like there's certain exception with this, like look at Van Gogh, but like at least in the Dutch and English church, that like with the controversy of statues, praying to statues, is kind of like there was like a big art movement after the Reformation to get away from like painting the human visage. It's kind of like a fear of idolatry, I think. But I don't know if that connects to what you're talking about, to fantasy in general.
Not exactly, but I think it's much more friendly as you do have that the higher church, the patristic Reformation, the more conservative Reformation tends to, and I would say tends to more highly value the classical arts versus fundamentalism, which would tend to move away from the more classical arts.
Is it also possible that, like, since fantasy is rooted in classical arts, that like with like, for lack of a better word, like the big box church of like, that modernist statement of make it new, mega church, like you kind of like getting away from that. You know what I'm saying here? I think you do.
Kind of, but again, I don't think the whole mega church idea would go well with the modernists.
Well, it's definitely not, well, modernists and like make it new, make it, like keep it up to date, like pull out the skinny jeans. You know, I mean,
Pull up
like,
the skinny, but that's sort of out of the scope of the modernist, because the scope of the modernist is find the place of the artist, at least to some extent, and sort of in that role is you're looking at like the purpose driven whatever. That's not room for an artist. That's not a place for an artist.
well, yeah, I mean, like, it kind of is postmodernist in a way because it's like let's redo church the way we have never done it before.
Right.
Disregard for tradition, but even though I would say artists a lot of times break the rules and they go for something new, but at the same time, like what you're saying, kind of, and that's definitely anti-high church. I mean, in style and definitely in theology. So
In postmodernism.
no, like mega churches, they're definitely
Oh yes,
they're neither high church in theology or in style.
concur. It, I think it's a lot of things, but we do see a difference between. Just we do. I think it's based on the denominations that have the most amount of members, versus like, yeah. But I'll just go with that for now.
But one caveat, I don't know if you know anything about the 1980s anti Dungeons and Dragons thing that was
I
going
know
on,
a
right?
lot about it. Why do you ask?
Well, you know, I know Jack Chick was involved with that, with like making his anti D&D
Jack
stuff, but
Chick
like,
is involved with a lot of things.
but I kind of wonder, like, yeah, but just going back to that is like, was it like a Cold War thing? Because like, was it only in the United States? Because I look at like the Wikipedia page with the anti D&D stuff. It seemed to be in America, but like, was it possibly also in Europe too? Like,
Well, it didn't start in Europe. That style of that didn't.
no, not the backlash again, not Dungeons and Dragons itself.
My understanding, and maybe flawed, is that at the time when this was happening, it did not have much of a presence enough in Europe for that to be something that occurred.
Okay, so they weren't playing Dungeons and Dragons for them to care about. Okay, that makes
I
sense.
I can't guarantee that, but from my understanding is that uh, basically before the 80s, it was relatively unknown outside of even the West Coast. Outside the West Coast in Texas, it was barely known. It spread in America. From there, I don't know how often it went into Europe. I don't think it was. If I remember correctly, I believe that like proper wargaming was still more popular over there.
Yeah,
But again, I don't have any sort of like documentation about that. But I'm just
yeah.
from what I know from hearing people who played back then talk, that would sort of be what I would surmise. But for people listening, please take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, that could bring balance into the whole issue because I think it's like, well, if it's so American only, like, you know, I look at this like kind of like Dungeons and Dragons and like, and you were talking earlier, like not it being opposed, but just not being a thing so much. And then, you know,
I mean,
but that is interesting, like it not having as much as a British backlash or European just because they didn't have it. That's an
well,
interesting.
there could be a lot of things. You have in Europe, you have a more secularized culture. In America,
Yeah,
you have a very firm Puritan streak that does still remain in a lot of ideas, especially in the more fundamental churches. It's just sort of just the way it is and the way it's presumably going to be, and I think that's part of why fantasy was less uh, popular to catch on. Also,
yeah.
there's
You also have a certain amount of wealth and free time and the cultural acceptance to like play games in your free time.
true, and I mean that's the best explanation I can offer. I don't think it's entirely
That's fair.
suitable,
That's
but
fair.
it's about what I got for right now after a very long day. Um, my question for you is, what game do you remember having an exceptional soundtrack? We were talking about soundtracks earlier, and I was wondering which game do you remember having a specifically exceptional soundtrack?
Funny, I was just watching a video about all these game soundtracks that took from regular music, and I really like Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, those kind of games. I'm trying to think of any more. Oh, Paper Mario and Super Mario Sunshine. So those are a few.
Good choices.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So
Do you have one more, or are you good?
yes.
Okay.
What kind of story or theme exploration warrants a story to be in a high fantasy world as opposed to a low fantasy one?
Blink, blink. Good question. Um, hmm. I mean, people. I've heard people say that that a high fantasy world
Yeah,
that in a high fantasy world the theme is really good versus evil, where in a low fantasy world the theme is usually law versus chaos.
tends to be.
I I don't I don't I don't I don't necessarily agree. I mean, that may be true generally. To me, I think it depends on what you're trying to, I think that's up to authors' decisions. I think things that tend to do more with I would say generally that more cosmic things would do better in high fantasy versus more human centered humanistic things would
Because you
do.
can make a mythology, or in your case, you can have like a whole new, like no humans at all necessarily.
Yeah, though mine I would not describe as high fantasy. Not in the
Oh, why would
least.
that be?
I would describe mine as mid to low fantasy.
Interesting.
Because you have magic, but magic's extremely rare. Um, uh, yeah, the issues, you aren't fighting some cosmic battle of good and evil. What do you do? Albeit many of the characters have very high ideals of what they do. What do you guys? You guys are a bunch of petty nobles squabbling about the fate of a province that the people who rule you don't. A
Species
fly
now.
and rats. But there's that. So for you, my last question is, to you, what is the spirit? What is I'm sorry, not the spiritual. What is the spiritual predecessor to Star Wars?
I think Dune. Fair.
Interesting.
George Lucas said it was an inspiration. Well, more than just that. I think he took a lot of elements, not in a copyright kind of way, but like he thought.
Sand planet. But I'm assuming deeper than that.
Well, he kind of like in Dune talked about Bene Gesserit, which are basically space nuns, and get in Herbert, I think more of a kind of almost leftist kind of understanding of religion, just seeing as something that manipulates people, doesn't
Frank
really.
Frank Herbert. Two first names. Sorry. Keep going with the so religion is a thing that manipulates people to Frank Herbert.
But to Lucas, it was kind of seen in a positive light. Um, One that apparently saves the world enough for you to blow up a Death Star. So,
Spiritualism.
I mean, like definitely, like it was concept of like religions in space in the future that like are warriors, and then he took that from there.
Interesting.
I'd love to do a comparison video. It's kind of funny, like what he took from that and like how he took the same elements and used them to create different themes.
I'd be interested to see that actually. All right, kids. Well, I think that's all for tonight. Hope you are having a fabulous night wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And this is Andrew and Matt for Behind the Curve, reminding you that four warriors of light walk away from the castle, light stars in the sky, searching for their quest to unite the crystals of earth, wind, fire, and air, and banish chaos back to the realm from whence he came. Good
Please
night.
buy more games. No.
Bye. Way to work in the advertisement.